Joining us now is the former British Prime Minister, Gordon Brown. Gordon, it's great to see you again. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been calling for a special international tribunal to investigate Putin for this invasion. What signal do you think that would send Putin and the world?
Well, I think in addition to the travel bans, the sanctions, the military help, the humanitarian help that's going to Ukraine, the support for refugees, we've got to make it clear to President Putin that he cannot act with impunity. And that's why many global leaders, presidents, prime ministers, former presidents and prime ministers, have backed the call that has been made by the Ukraine government for us to support an international tribunal that would try President Putin and his inner circle for the crime of aggression. I think we've got to make it absolutely clear that what's happening is against all international law. The targeting of innocent civilians, the bombing of public spaces like hospitals and schools, the breach of humanitarian corridors, the breach of ceasefires that were previously arranged, the threat of using nuclear power stations as blackmail, even as my old friend David Petraeus has been saying, even the threat of chemical and nuclear weapons. We've got to make it absolutely clear that just as at Nuremberg in the 1940s, just as with Yugoslavia, with Rwanda, and with Liberia, where war crimes were tried, that President Putin is committing these crimes and he's got to be brought to justice. And of course, there may be an agreement for peace, and I would like to see that. But in the meantime, we've got to say, look, these are international crimes that deserve the punishment of the world.
So often, war crimes tribunals in particular take so many years to prove and to reach convictions. And then there are all these legal moves where individual countries have to make these decisions. Could something be done more quickly in this case? Well, that's why
we're talking about the crime of aggression, Andrea. The International Criminal Court can try war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. But that takes a huge amount of time and, of course, a lot of proof and evidence about the direct responsibility of the leader. But the crime of aggression is the initial crime. It's pretty obvious that that is what has happened. It's the incursion into a sovereign state. It's the continuation of that by attacking cities. It started, of course, in 2014 with the invasion of the Crimea. And so you could bring together, if a number of states came together to support Ukraine, and a lot of countries are now looking at this, you could have an indictment of President Putin within a few months. And of course, you could have the possibility of a trial, say, in The Hague, where, of course, the International Criminal Court would be working in a complementary way. So I think things could move forward. But the important thing is to recognize, and for the whole world and the Russian people to recognize, they're not being told the truth at the moment, that these are crimes that are recognized in international law as completely unacceptable and immoral, and they are liable to punishment. And, you know, some people in the Putin inner circle will be starting to look at what they may face, as happened at Nuremberg, when a lot of German criminals who were part of the Hitler clique, they decided to move and to admit their crimes and to help prosecute the guilty. So I think it's a moral boosting gesture because Ukraine is asking for it, but I think it's also sending a very strong message to those people who are prosecuting this war that they will not be able to act with impunity.
You've dealt with Vladimir Putin before. Do you think there's any way to get him to back down and compromise and agree to a ceasefire?
I met President Putin on many occasions, and the first time I met him, he did exactly what he has done in the last few weeks. He said, look, oil and gas, we can sell it to the east or sell it to the west. It's up to you. And it was threatening. And he threatens people, and I don't think he's changed in that. And he believes that threat works. And the only thing he understands is strength. The only thing he understands is the strength of the allies coming together, which is what's happening at this NATO summit, which President Biden is at tomorrow. And what he exploits all the time is weakness. And if we are weak, then he will move forward. If we show strength, then we can push him back. And it's very important to recognize that in addition to the International Criminal Court, the action that's been taken under the European Convention of Human Rights, the cases that's at the International Court of Justice, then the more simple way is to say this is a crime of aggression. Whenever there is aggression, there's got to be the liability for punishment. President Putin should know, and the Russian people should know. And it's really important that we can get messages into Russia to tell people that what he is explaining as what I think he calls an isolated military incident is actually a war against the sovereign people. And I want to respond to the courage of the people of Ukraine, because in the midst of all the suffering, hearts broken, their courage has been unbreakable. Their unity has been indestructible. And we've got to send out a message to them that we're doing everything in our power to give them support.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan suggested that it's time to consider kicking Russia out of the G20. Should that be done, and other international institutions as well?
Well, when I was leading in Britain, Russia was removed from the G8. They tried very hard to create a G8 out of the G7, and Germany and other countries were very keen, and people wanted Russia to be part of the advanced economies trying to make for a better world, but they had to be kicked out. And equally, their position at the G20 is, I don't think President Putin has attended meetings for some time. And of course, he is and will be, as long as he's president, a pariah on the international stage. Because to take the crime of aggression and to pursue this hatred of the Ukrainian people, everything we've taken for granted since 1990, that the international community works through diplomacy and negotiation and through international institutions, is turning completely on its head, replacing the rule of law by the use of force. And we've got to make it clear that that is unacceptable in the international community.
And what should we do if he uses nuclear, or, well, God forbid nuclear, but chemical, biological weapons? Is there any way to stop him, to deter him?
Andrea, yes, I think you're right. And General Petraeus touched on this. President Biden has made it absolutely clear, as will all the NATO leaders tomorrow, that the use of chemical or tactical nuclear weapons introduces a new element into this conflict, which will require a huge response by the West. Now, President Biden has said on his departure from Washington, he's going to propose new sanctions. He'll want Europe to do more on oil and gas. He'll want more to be done on simple trade between Russia for it to be cut off. He'll want more to be done to actually make sure that the oligarchs are really deprived of their wealth and their properties and everything else. But of course, if we come to the use of chemical or nuclear weapons, and there's already a suggestion that he's used vacuum bombs, which are, again, illegal in the conduct of war, then of course NATO, without saying what its measures are going to be, will have to take further action.
Gordon Brown, former UK Prime Minister, and a great leader of the UN and humanitarian education efforts around the world to this day. Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.